Good evening, friends, fiends, and night owl supremes. Welcome to A Bit Late. I hope you're having a wonderful evening or day whenever you're listening to this, and are in the mood for a weird story, weird and another confusing story, because that's what we've got tonight. I've got a little cup of tea, because it's a short and sweet tale. It's called The Pink, and I have a lot of thoughts on this one, and I have a lot of thoughts. There is a poodle that breathes fire. There is a little prince that can wish for anything he wants, but it's weird, like nothing he wishes for. Well, he doesn't use his power very well. Maybe that's how we should phrase that. There's a cook who is probably in the same vein as the evil queen from Snow White, although I would say he's even more evil because, well, you'll see. But yeah, it's a weird tale full of angst and, if only they had done this, and it is very short. And I do have a lot to say about it, so get a cup of tea yourself, light your candles, turn on your fairy lights, summon your animal familiars, and get cozy for tonight's fairy tale, The Pink. There was once a queen who had not been blessed with children. As she walked in her garden, she prayed every morning that a son or daughter might be given to her. Then one day, a fairy came and said to her, "Be content, you shall have a son, and he shall be endowed with the power of wishing, so that whatsoever he wishes for shall be granted to him." She hurried to the king and told him the joyful news, and when the time came, a son was born to them, and they were filled with delight. He has the power of wishing. I like it. Every morning the queen used to take her little son into the gardens where the wild animals were kept to bathe him in a clear, sparkling fountain. This is so freaking idyllic. It happened one day when the child was a little older that as she sat with him on her lap, she fell asleep. That's not so idyllic. The old cook, who knew that the child had the power of wishing, came by and stole it. What? He also killed a chicken and dropped some of its blood on the queen's garments. Oh, this is devious, cook. Usually the cooks in stories are helpful. Like, no, I'm not going to cook those children for you to eat, queen. No, not this guy. Then he took the child away to a secret place where he placed it out to be nursed. He just leaves the kid to be nursed. Then he ran back to the king and accused the queen of having allowed her child to be carried off by a wild animal. I bet you if anyone knew the queen and how desperately she loved her child, they would not believe this story for a second, but back in Once Upon a Time, if the cook accuses the queen, well, she must be guilty, I guess. When the king saw the blood on the queen's garments, he believed the story and was overwhelmed with anger. He caused a high tower to be built into which neither the sun nor the moon could penetrate. There he ordered his wife to be shut up and the door walled up. She was to stay there for 7 years without eating or drinking so as to gradually pine away. How would she live that long without food or water? This sounds awful. It's just a room in a tower, like nowhere. I'm thinking way too graphically about this, and I don't have to take you guys there with me, so I won't, but that sounds terrible. Did she even get a say? This story is confusing. It's so short, but it's confusing. But 2 fairies in the shape of white doves came to her, bringing food twice a day till the 7 years were ended. King didn't count on that. Meanwhile, the cook thought, if the child really has the power of wishing and I stay here, I might easily fall into disgrace. So he left the palace and went to the boy, who was then old enough to talk, and said to him, "Wish for a beautiful castle with a garden and everything belonging to it." Hardly had the words passed the boy's lips than all he had asked for was there. After a time the cook said, "It is not good for you to be so much alone. Wish for a beautiful maiden to be your companion." How old is the prince now? Is he like 8? He needs a companion who's beautiful? Like he needs a beautiful companion? This is weird. The prince uttered a wish and immediately a maiden stood before him more beautiful than any painter could paint. They grew very fond of each other and played together while the old cook went out hunting like any grand gentleman. But the idea came to him one day that the prince might wish to go home to his father sometime, and would thereby be placed in a very awkward position. So he took the maiden aside and said to her, "Tonight when the boy is asleep, go and drive this knife into his heart. Then bring me his heart and his tongue. If you fail to do it, you will lose your own life." Okay, this guy is way more evil than the evil queen. Well, I mean, they're maybe the same level of evil, right? Like, he wants this kid's heart and tongue, and he's kidnapped him from his own parents and caused the queen to be shut up forever. I don't like him. Then he went away, but when the next day came, the maiden had not yet obeyed his command, and she said, "Why should I shed his innocent blood when he has never done any harm to any creature in his life?" The cook again said, "If you do not obey me, you will lose your own life." When he had gone away, she ordered a young hind to be brought and killed. Then she cut out its heart and tongue and put them on a dish. This is just like in Sleeping Beauty, but the roles are reversed. That's what the cook does to the queen. When she saw the old man coming, she said to the boy, "Get into bed and cover yourself right over." The old scoundrel came in and said, "Where are the tongue and heart of the boy?" So much for keeping that secret from everybody else. Like, oh, he came in and totally asked for the boy's heart and tongue. You're not innocent, you know? They can't cover that up if the servants or everybody else there talks. The maiden gave him the dish, but the prince threw off the coverings and said, "You old sinner, why did you want to kill me? Now hear your sentence. You shall be turned into a black poodle with a gold chain round your neck, and you shall be made to eat live coals so that the flames of fire may come out of your mouth." What? I love this story. I mean, I don't, but we have all of a sudden a fire-breathing poodle. Like, this is amazing. I never could have guessed this from the first paragraph, or the paragraph before this one. It's fantastic. As he said the words, the old man was changed into a black poodle with a gold chain round his neck, and the scullions brought live coals, which he had to eat till the flames poured out of his mouth. Ouch, 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 ouch. The prince stayed on at the castle for a time, thinking of his mother and wondering if she were still alive. I mean, yeah, think about Mom, please. At last he said to the maiden, "I'm going to my own country. If you like, you can go with me. I will take you." She answered, "Alas, it is so far off, and what should I do in a strange country where I know no one?" As she did not wish to go, and yet they could not bear to be parted, he changed her into a beautiful pink, which he took with him. What? She doesn't want to go. I don't understand how this is a solution. Then he set out on his journey, and the poodle was made to run alongside the prince until he reached his own country. This is weird. Arrived there, he went straight to the tower where his mother was imprisoned. And as the tower was so high, he wished for a ladder to reach the top. Then he climbed up, looked in, and cried, "Dearest mother, Lady Queen, are you still alive?" She, thinking it was the fairies who brought her food, came back and said, "I have just eaten. I do not want anything more." Then he said, "I am your own dear son, whom the wild animals were supposed to have devoured." How does he know that? He was not able to know that. The cook probably didn't tell him. "But I'm still alive, and soon I shall come and rescue you." Why not just do it now? Wish for a staircase to descend the tower. Wish for a door. Fairy tales and timing, man. Then he got down and went to his father. He had himself announced as a strange huntsman anxious to take service with the king, who said, yes, if he was skilled in game preserving and could procure plenty of venison, he would engage him. But there had never before been any game in the whole district. Yes, we will hire him if he can provide us with venison, which, by the way, has never been spotted here before. I don't get it, but I like it. The huntsman promised to procure as much game as the king could possibly require for the royal table. Promised to procure is quite a tongue twister. Then he called the whole hunt together and ordered them all to come into the forest with him. He caused a great circle to be enclosed with only one outlet. Then he took his place in the middle and began to wish as hard as he could. Immediately, over 200 head of game came running into the enclosure. These the huntsman had to shoot, and then they were piled onto 60 country wagons and driven home to the king. So for once he was able to load his board with game. after having had none for many years. If you've listened to these stories before, you know it's fascinating to want to know about the economy of each country in which these stories take place. How are they surviving with no game? What, are they trading all their money for food from other countries? I don't know. This is fascinating stuff, and it's just now found out that there is no game. So what could have possibly carried off the little kid when he was a baby if there's no game? I love it. Kind of. The king was much pleased and commanded his whole court to a banquet on the following day. When they were all assembled, he said to the huntsman, "You shall sit by me as you are so clever." You guys better eat all this venison in one day because it might not last. Unless, I guess he is skilled in preserving though. He answered, "My lord and king, may it please your majesty, I am only a poor huntsman." The king, however, insisted and said, "I command you to sit by me." As he sat there, his thoughts wandered to his dear mother, and he wished one of the courtiers would speak of her. Hardly had he wished it than the Lord High Marshal said, "Your Majesty, we are all rejoicing here. How fares it with Her Majesty the Queen? Is she still alive in the tower, or has she perished?" But the king answered, "She allowed my beloved son to be devoured by wild animals," which existed, "and I do not wish to hear anything about her." The huntsman stood up and said, "Gracious father, she is still alive and I am her son. He was not devoured by wild animals, he was taken away by the scoundrel of a cook. He stole me while my mother was asleep and sprinkled her garments with the blood of a chicken." Then he brought up the black poodle with the golden chain and said, "This is the villain." I gotta appreciate the pomp and circumstance, but could have just came in and said, "Mom, I'm here, taking you down, we're gonna go tell Dad everything's good." What? He ordered some live coals to be brought, which he made the dog eat in sight of all the people till the flames poured out of his mouth. Poor poodle. Then he asked the king if he would like to see the cook in his true shape and wished him back, and he stood there in his white apron with his knife at his side. The king was furious when he saw him and ordered him to be thrown into the deepest dungeon. Then the huntsman said further, "My father, would you like to see the maiden who so tenderly saved my life when she was ordered to kill me? Although by doing so she should have lost her own life." Story. She didn't want to be there. The king answered, "Yes, I will gladly see her." Then his son said, "Gracious father, I will show her to you first in the guise of a beautiful flower." He put his hand into his pocket and brought out the pink. It was a finer one than the king had ever seen before. Then his son said, "Now I will show her to you in her true form." The moment his wish was uttered, she stood before them in all her beauty, which was greater than any artist could paint. But Mom's still in the tower, but let's look at this pretty girl who didn't want to be here. The king sent ladies and gentlemen in waiting to the tower to bring the queen back to his royal table. But when they reached the tower, they found that she would no longer eat or drink. And she said, "The merciful God, who has preserved my life for so long, soon will release me now." 3 days after she died. What? At her burial, the 2 white doves which had brought her food during her captivity followed her and hovered over her grave. The old king caused the wicked cook to be torn into 4 quarters, but his own heart was filled with grief and remorse, and he died soon after. His son married the beautiful maiden he had brought home with him as a flower who didn't want to be there, and for all I know, they may still be living. The end. Well, I have many a thought on this tale. What? If the kid could wish for anything, he could have just wished to be home. Plain as that. I don't know why he had such elaborate tricks to try to free his mother when he could have just, freed her? Claimed his place? I don't know why he brought the girl with him when she was like, I like you, I want to be with you forever, but I don't want to go to your new country. I don't want to go. The cook is a poodle, a fire-breathing poodle, then he's a cook, but then he's not a cook, and then the mom dies. She dies. After 7 years of living like that, she's like, "Oh, my son's back, everything is great, I'm not going to eat anymore." That makes no sense to me. And then the father dies of a broken heart shortly thereafter. leaving a child prince and a maiden to rule the kingdom. Madness fairy tale logic. Don't you just love it? But yeah, this was the story called The Pink. Short and sweet and confusing as all get out, but hey, that's why we like some fairy tales, right? I do hope you are having a wonderful evening and that it's a little bit better now after hearing this story. But now off to sleep and dream what you will, or stay a while and enjoy another tale. Whichever you choose, I'll speak to you again, and until then, stay spooky, my friends. Good night.